Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about the effect of COVID-19 on off-hire under time charters. Now, for a vessel to go off-hire, there are various stages we work through. Is time lost due to prevention of the full working of the vessel? Is this due to an off-hire event? And then how much time is lost? And there's a difference in calculating this depending on whether we have a net or a period clause. There's also the question, though, that if the off-hire event may be due to a breach by the charterer, and in that case, the ship owner should be able to recover the off-hire by way of damages for that breach, or indeed may not be liable to pay it, liable to have it deducted in the first place due to circularity of action, and that's what we saw in Lentz and Anglo-Soviet. A possible breach by the charterers which could lead to an off-hire event might be failure to renominate a port which has become unsafe, something which I'll be talking about in a later discussion. Today I'm just going to look at what happens with quarantine and free pratique and the delays which happen as a result of that due to the current COVID-19 pandemic. I've already had a look at those in the context of a voyage charter. Now we are looking at how that works out in the context of a time charter. A fairly relevant case would be the Apollo. We've got two crew who are discharged in Naples, and they got gastroenteritis and suspected typhus. This is disclosed when the vessel gets to her next port in Liberia. The health officers are told about what's happened in Naples, and after they've been examining the ship, free pratique is not granted until 10:30 on the next day. And shortly after that, the vessel proceeds towards the loading berth. And the charterers subsequently claim that the vessel is off-hire from the time the health inspectors had finished their examination through till the time the ship actually starts proceeding to her loading berth at 10:30. And they also claim items of bunker consumption and stamp duties. Well, they're successful. Now, this clearly is a case where free pratique being granted is not a mere formality. Further examination is necessary as a result of the fact that we've had crew on board the ship who've been discharged at the previous port with suspected typhus. And the vessel goes off hire. Now, we will look into the question of what was the off-hire event in a bit more detail later on. We look now at the NYPE 1946 form, clause 15. Various events that are mentioned: deficiency and or default of men or stores. Deficiency of and or default of men, that's not really covering sickness or suspected sickness of crew members. So let's have a look. It's not an average accident of ship or cargo, there's no dry docking, but it could be any other cause preventing the full working of the vessel. And that would have been the case in the Apollo, but in fact the matter was made even clearer by the fact that the additional words whatsoever were included in that at the end of the relevant off-hire clause. Again, I'll come on to the significance of that a little bit later on in this talk. Now, contrast that with the Laconian confidence. Here we've got discharge ending as per normally, and there's a survey which shows that there's some small quantity of rejected residue sweepings on board the ship. And to everybody's surprise, the Bangladeshi port authorities say you can't leave unless you get rid of the residue sweepings. And that causes the vessel to be delayed for nearly 18 days. And it's only after that she's allowed to dump the residues and allowed to sail. Now, this is something external to the ship. It's not an average accident. Any other cause preventing the working of the ship? Now, it certainly has prevented the full working of the ship, but because she's not able to sail and leave the discharge port. But it's not covered by the off-hire event of any other cause. That is subject to the eius generis rule, and there's nothing in the ship or the crew itself which has been responsible for this delay. Now, with the Apollo, although the Apollo was a case where the charter had the additional word whatsoever, which would completely change things, that it's still very likely that that off-hire would have come within the words any other cause without the additional word whatsoever, because the problem is with the crew, and that affects the ship. And indeed, there is an obiter dicta of Mr. Justice Ricks in the Laconian confidence where he says, where the authorities act properly or reasonably pursuant to the suspected inefficiency or incapacity of the vessel, any time lost may well be off-hire, even in the absence of the word whatsoever. Inefficiency or incapacity of the vessel would also cover suspected infection of the crew of that vessel. And that would mean that the vessel would probably be off hire, even without the additional word whatsoever. So I have to pause recording because somebody's at my door. Yes, that was just a delivery for my next door neighbour, some fish, which I've had to take in and keep away from the dock. So if there's quarantine, for example, because you arrive at the port and if you then find that one or more of the crew has got COVID-19, that will, the delay resulting during that quarantine period will be within the any other cause listed in the off-hire clause. And that's actually quite relevant at the moment. Today, in the Financial Times, I read that a vessel which has just come into South Korea with a Russian crew on board, that has just tested, I think 19 members of the crew have tested positive for COVID-19. And so the quarantine delays there would be something which would cause the vessel to go off hire. However, the situation I think would be different where you are just getting delays because of the extended health checks which happen as part of free pratique. So even if you're going to have extra delays due to the changed nature of free pratique during the COVID pandemic, that delay would not be within any other course, although it may well be different if you have the word whatsoever in your off-hire clause. Other wordings, the shell time clause puts the vessel off hire when you've got for the purpose of obtaining medical advice or treatment for or landing any sick or injured person other than a charterer's representative, or for the purpose of landing the body of any person other than a charterer's representative, and such loss continues for more than 3 consecutive hours. That's going to be, the vessel will go off hire for that. And then, due to any delay in quarantine arising from the master's, officers, or crew having had communication with the shore at any infected area without the written consent or instruction of the charterers or their agents, or through any detention by customs or other authorities caused by smuggling or other infraction of local law on the part of the master, officers, or crew. So you've got this specific reference to delay in quarantine, which arises from the fact that the master, officers, or crew have had communication with the shore at an infected area without charter's written consent. When you add the extra word whatsoever, it becomes a lot easier to include delay due to extended free pratique and delay due to quarantine within the ambit of off-hire. The Apollo is a case where the words whatsoever appeared in the NYPE clause 15. And that was the case where you've got an extended free pratique and subsequent delays, which are due to the fact that the Liberian authorities have been notified of the fact that the ship has had to disembark a couple of its crew with suspected typhus at the previous port. But Mr. Justice Ricks is certainly of the view that the position would have been the same in that situation, even without the addition of that extra wording. However, if you have got that extra wording, that should enable the extended delays in getting free pratique to come to count as off-hire. What about bunkers consumed during off-hire? Generally, these are not going to be recoverable unless there's something specific provided in the off-hire clause that enables you to make such a deduction. If there isn't, the charter is going to have to claim the bunkers by showing that the delay is due to a breach of contract by the ship owners and claim them by way of damages. That's not always going to be the case. However, with crew illness, if it's the fact of a member of the crew testing positive for COVID-19 and the ship then being quarantined, say for 14 days, that could well be due to a breach of contract by the ship owner. There's a case called Chiampa versus British India Steam Navigation Code that states that the ship can be rendered unseaworthy due to the presence on board of crew with infectious illnesses. So there may well be a breach of that. If you've got clause paramount in your charter party, then the owners will have the defense of taking due diligence to make sure the vessel was seaworthy. And presumably due diligence here would mean suitable testing of the crew for infectious diseases at the previous port. So that's really what I'm going to say today about off-hire, but I will be participating in a webinar on the 8th of July, organised by the Institute of International Shipping and Trade Law. We're going to be hosting the webinar between 12:30 and 1:45 on that day, a lunchtime special. And my topic will be generally about how COVID-19 may affect charter parties, both voyage charters and time charters. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to speaking more on this topic on the 8th of July.